You're listening to Kids Ministry Answers from Stuff You Can Use, from Stuff You Can Use, from StuffYouCanUse.org.
Welcome to Kids Ministry Answers. My name is Linda.
And my name is Jason, and this is the podcast where you ask the questions and we help you find the answers.
All right, Jason, we have bravely entered a new year.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but the holiday rush and just a turn into a new year has just been very chaotic and stressful and busy. I'm sure you've experienced much of the same. I mean, you have big families and such.
Yeah.
How has that whole season been for you?
Oh, man. Yeah, the season has been a little bit wild. I do have little ones, so I was happy to get through the Christmas season. But now, I don't know how you feel about it, but when you get past Christmas and New Year's, then the winter really begins.
Sure.
It's now we're really into, the doldrums of winter.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a word I would use, but that's
yes,
how
that sounds very fancy. It sounds like something from the Phantom Toll Booth, which is my favorite book. Fun fact.
Yeah.
No, I totally would know what you mean, because for me, I think when I'm in project mode or event mode, I'm amped up, the adrenaline's running high. There's so many things I need to get done. And then once that's done, you feel like, okay, now's the time to take a breath. But actually what happens is you're just flooded with, wait, no, there are so many other things I need to do. Or your body just completely breaks down and be like, okay, now I can just collapse. And so there's really no in between. And so I just like going into this New Year conversation thinking about how we can intentionally find ways to rest, which is our conversation for today. Jason, what is your experience with rest?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking about this because I think it's something we all need to hear more about and get a lot of help with. Linda, you and I have actually talked about this a lot.
We have.
And I feel like when COVID happened, it really did affect my relationship with rest in a negative way. My responsibilities at the church I was at ramped up by a lot because we were doing everything online.
Right.
And I came out of that season man, I can't get through a day without feeling like I've done something, produced something, And so rest became when do I do it? How can I fit it in?
It's such a luxury.
Yeah. It seems like a luxury, or I feel guilty about doing it. So I'd say my experience with rest is that I'm in an interesting season. I need to hear some answers, some help on that subject. So what about you? What's your experience with rest?
Yeah, like you mentioned, we talked about this, and rest is so elusive, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. It's either you can't get it, or you just, you feel so guilty about taking time off and taking time for yourself. And so I think we have gotten in this cycle of believing that rest and self-care in this way is somehow also selfish, right?
Yes.
And so we don't actually take the time to recover and repair and do the things that we need to do in order to be recharged so that we can continue doing the things that we want to do. So I think this is such a crucial topic, and I, like you, would love some insight into this. And I think many of our listeners are probably resonating with this as well, because that is our question for today. So let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm Tom, and I've got a question about rest. How do you build rest into your ministry year?
Yeah, Tom, we feel that.
We feel you, yeah. Especially when it relates to ministry. I feel like, especially in kids and youth ministry, rest has never been a huge facet of what people think about when they plan out their year.
Right.
Kids ministry and youth ministry people need to be these high energy people that are always on, always going, always moving. And we often don't build in any time to, how do you get the energy to do that? How do you get the energy to always be on? How do you get the energy to, be that high energy person? And Yeah, so this is an awesome question to think about.
Yeah. And you're right, because when it comes to ministry, the most visible parts of what we do are in the weekends, on the Sundays, during
Right.
those ministry hours. But then we don't really think about all of the invisible labor that goes in during the week when we're not being seen by our kids and the parents and the rest of the church. And so people think, well, you had all week to rest. But
Right.
that's never the case. And ministry
Never,
leaders,
yeah.
I'm sure, who are listening to this are furiously nodding their heads, right? Because no, during the week is when we prepare and when we take care of other things. So yes, building rest intentionally into your ministry calendar, into your ministry space, that is such a crucial question, which is why you and Brooklyn from our YMA podcast, our Youth Ministry Answers podcast, got together to interview Dr. Yulee Lee, who had a lot to say about this topic. So let's check out this interview together.
So first off, Brooklyn, happy to be with you today on this crossover episode.
I'm so excited.
And especially to talk about this, because this is like such a great question. The question that if you're in ministry, out of ministry, like we all wrestle with it. How do you get rest? So Brooklyn, what are some things you do? I can tell by shaking your head. You're already like, but what do you do to get some rest?
Well, ideally, I would read or, relax, watch some TV, go outside, maybe go for a run. Yeah. But I tend to schedule all that so frenetically that none of it feels restful.
Yeah, is it really rest?
I'm really, yeah. And sometimes I'm like, I need to stack multiple rests on top for it to feel like a rest. So I really am excited to hear what our guest has to share about this today. And our guest is Dr. Yulee Lee, the Dr. Yulee Lee. She is somebody I just respect and admire, and I get to work with every day. She's an executive leader here at Stuff You Can Use. And she's also the co-founder of Cora Collective. She's a mom, an author, speaker, coach. She's so many things. And I'm just so excited that she's here to share on this topic because I've seen it in her life, like in her boundaries and the things that she says and does. I even overheard her say once that she rests just staring out the window, eating M&Ms or something.
Which we have to talk more about that.
I know. I heard her say that and it has stuck with me. And recently I went to a window and I just popped some M&Ms in slowly.
So I haven't done it, but I've definitely, when I see M&Ms at the grocery store, I'm like, wow. I should try.
You just stare off into space and just pop a couple and then see what happens.
I think they're a peanut M&Ms to be exact.
Peanut M&Ms to be exact, a certain kind. So Yulee, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Yay! I'm sure you have other strategies besides, disassociating and eating peanut M&Ms.
We've locked in on the M&Ms. I'm sure there's tons of other stuff.
Yeah. I love being known as the peanut M&M lady. That's gonna stick with everybody.
You said that, I was
one takeaway.
Wait. I was like, wait, what? I want.
I think that says something about Brooklyn and I. That's the thing. We're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Peanut M&Ms.
What did you say?
Yeah.
So yes,
that may or may not work for anybody listening to this podcast.
50-50.
But I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah,
it's going to be a fun conversation, and I look forward to talking more about what it's like to rest and how that can feel better for us and how we can do it better as well. So
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about you before we dive right in. What are you up to these days? What are you into?
Yeah, well, I am I love to always honor my grandfather wherever I am. So I like to just tell everybody that I'm a product of my grandfather's love. He raised me from when I was birthed to age 3. He was an entrepreneur, a leader who inspired me, just a loving caretaker in my life. And I feel like he influenced who I am today. So a lot of the things I do are in the leadership circles, leadership development, leadership training, teaching, etc. And I try to bring that to Stuff You Can Use and to every space I occupy. So that's a little bit more of who I am.
Wow. So cool. Thanks for sharing that. 100%.
Yeah, that's so
great.
Special. I love that.
So we're going to talk about how to get some rest today. And Yulee, you're going to help us with this. I think you have 5 things for us. So where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I first want to start by acknowledging that it's okay if we're feeling tired. Like I was just sharing with a friend earlier before we started talking together today that I feel a bit overwhelmed this week with just a lot of things happening right after the new year. And just this week in particular, I felt like overwhelmed with work related things. And I think it's just good to acknowledge that we are humans and that we get tired because we're working really hard every day to provide for our families, to do what we're passionate about. And we have so many different roles. You know, I'm a mom, wife. I try to figure things out with my church. I want to be a good neighbor, and I want to do all of these things and I do them. And then before I know it, I just feel like, I don't know, just too much is going on. And I think, there's no shame around that. There's no, we shouldn't feel guilty about getting tired. But the question is, how can we create better rhythms to feel more rested? And what might that look like? And it looks different for all of us. And so I'm excited to talk about how we can do that better individually and also collectively.
Amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
So where do you start with that? Like all of the stuff you
yes,
just
we're
mentioned.
Listening.
We're definitely listening. But like what Brooklyn said earlier, with rest, it can be so like, I got to get it into my schedule. I got to do this. I got to do that. I might stack rest together. It can turn into anything but actual rest. It's definitely not like a fun thing or something that we like to do. It can turn into feel like more work. So how do we make sure we keep it like something that's good?
Yeah. I love that. Well, I love talking about starting points. So for me, as a parallel to this conversation, so whenever I get a new job or start a new project, my starting point is not so much like, oh, I've always wanted this new project or I've always wanted this new position. My starting point is that I am God's beloved. Like checking in with who you are and who God says you are. I think that should always be our starting point for every conversation or everything that is a little bit confusing. So then to bring that to rest, for me, the starting point in this conversation of rest is knowing that God likes it when we rest. He commands that we rest. He doesn't just allow it. Also, God enjoys rest, and we see that in after creation, on the seventh day, he rests and he says, it is good. And so there's a delight in that statement. There's an enjoyment in that statement. And also, I just thought of this also in Isaiah, um, God, uh, God tells people to call the Sabbath a delight. Like that is literally there to call the Sabbath a delight. So, um, knowing that and starting from God's perspective, I think is really, really important because then we know rest isn't supposed to feel like a chore. It's supposed to be delightful and it's supposed to be enjoyed. And so how do we translate that then into our daily lives? And what does that look like is the task we have at hand.
Yes, this is so good, Yulee. Remembering that rest is God's delight is the starting point. When you were saying delight, I don't know why my brain did this, but I was equating it with like a sweet treat, like you like treat yourself to something sweet when you are like, oh, I worked really hard. I'm going to have a sweet treat. Maybe that's why you eat M&Ms. I don't know. But I think if we looked at rest as like a sweet treat, just like we do getting to have, ice cream on a weekend or getting to like go outside or do something, super fun. I think if we could look at it that way, we could be more excited about it and prioritize it a little bit better. Because as I'm hearing you speak about it, I'm like, oh, wow, I probably don't prioritize it as actively as I do other things like where are we going to eat tonight? Or how are we going to like celebrate your birthday? There's like all these fun things we do event wise. And I don't know, we might even get like a manicure or a pedicure, but unless it's like framed in this idea of rest, we might miss the whole point. Like this delight where God wants you to like unplug from the things and just be openly like not pursuing stuff, just resting. And I think getting down to that like 0 miles per hour part is probably the hardest thing for me. So I'm wondering, and Jason, maybe you might be wondering something similarly, something different. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I thought like the framing of it is what stood out from what you said. Like oftentimes I'll lay down to actually sleep. And my framing of that is like, it's time to sleep. there's not
get
much
7
that
hours.
I actually lay down and I'm like, man, I am content and happy to do what I'm about to do. And that framing would be like very profound for people because we live in a grind culture. And so framing rest as not like, well, I got to add this to part of my schedule, but no, this is actually delightful. God wants me to do this. Like you said from Isaiah, like God wants us to call this a delightful thing. And so I guess I am like, if we can do that, if we can reframe rest, then like Brooklyn said, like, what do we do next? So if number one is remembering that rest is delightful, what do we do after that?
I think the nappers out there, the ones that like naps, they're all like, yes, goodies.
Yes,
like,
let's do it.
I love a nap. But then all of the rest of us are like, wait, this could be something enjoyable that I look forward to. And not like torture that I have to go to bed or have to take a rest. So this is such good framework, like Jason said, Yulee. Remember, rest is God's delight. That was our first little point that Yulee wanted to share with us. So what's next? Tell us like, how to do this.
Okay. So I think it's helpful to kind of distinguish between what is rest versus unrest. Like, okay, so let's go into that a little bit because I just find this a very interesting conversation. So I don't like rest is not just not working. So we can stop moving and still be exhausted inside. So you all know what this feels like, right? Like I will sit on the couch and like literally physically not move and watch Netflix, but I can still feel like I am exhausted. It's just something's just on the TV in front of me, and physically I'm not moving. But real rest, I think, is when our bodies and our minds and even our hearts finally get to calm down. Like if you imagine the heartbeat sort of like calming down to a normal heartbeat rate. And if we stop trying to hold everything together, I think that is actually what rest is. And if we look in scripture again, like God rests not because he's tired, but because the work is done and good, like we just talked about, right? So I think rest says, like, I don't have to keep proving myself right now. And I think that is what rest is. It's not just not working. It's like the state of our bodies and our minds and our just internal selves where we finally feel calm and we stop trying to hold everything together is how I would define rest. And then for me, unrest is when we never shut off. So by contrast is when we never shut off. And this is literally what I just said. It's sitting on the couch, but our brain is still spinning because we're like worried about something. We're replaying those work conversations that were a little bit like annoying or something. Or maybe a parent in our ministry gave us advice and we're still trying to figure out if that was relevant to anything that we are doing in our ministries. But we're thinking about what we should be doing. Yeah, I know, right? And so I think unrest is living like everything depends on you. Rest is trusting that it doesn't.
I don't think
that's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to get it's hard to get there.
Yeah. And since we live, I said grind culture before, but like we kind of live in that place,
Yeah.
like constant overwhelm, constant stimulation, constant everything. And so like, how do we name it, when it's right there in front of us and we feel our unrest, but then how do we name, I don't even know if that's the right term, but to name the unrest that's in front of us.
Okay, I love this question. Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I like this question because in some ministry contexts, it wasn't even really super safe to say like, I'm tired or I need a rest.
Yeah.
So
especially for youth ministry and kids ministry people, because we're always supposed to be like, hey, everything's great. Like, hey, kids, what's going on? This next season's going to be the best one, So like, how do we name that,
Okay, let's get a little bit more practical. So in terms of how to name unrest, okay, again, when I look in scripture, not all unrest comes from the same place. Okay, so there are seasons in the Bible where God's people are tired because they are faithfully doing hard things. So that's one. And then there are seasons where they are restless because something is misaligned. Like they're disobedient or something is off with their trust or their identity, And so that's what I see in scripture of where unrest pops up is these two sort of general buckets. One happens when God's people are tired because they are faithfully doing things that they're supposed to be doing. Another is because they're misaligned with God's purpose, identity, they're being disobedient, etc. So if you misdiagnose your season, then you're going to apply the wrong solution, right? So I think we can begin diagnosing our season of unrest by asking a few questions. So my first question for everybody is your unrest coming from, this is going to come off a little bit confusing, but I'll explain. Is my unrest coming from overuse or from misdirection? So what I mean by that is your unrest coming from an overuse of your giftings, what you're supposed to be doing? Are you like overdoing it in this area of faithfulness? Or is your unrest coming from misdirection? Like you're literally not doing what God's purpose is for you. And you're just so tired because you're trying to make your own way. And you're trying to create your own path because that is a very draining activity. So I think this first question can be helpful to get us thinking about which sort of bucket we fall into. So hopefully that's a good start for people.
No, that's really good. So it's like there are these two subpoints here. Recognize your unrest, but then which kind of unrest is it? So you can properly like diagnose like what needs to happen next. That's amazing because if it's all in one bucket, we're just like, well, I don't know how I got here, but and you might even blame yourself because we started this conversation by saying there's no shame in feeling like you need rest because it is God's delight and it is something important that God valued from the beginning when God made everything, including us, and called it all good. Rest was included in that. So to shame ourselves for feeling unrest is kind of tough, but maybe just like putting it into these two buckets gives us a little bit better opportunity to see, oh, actually we've been really faithful in this thing. And it's why, because we've been working and serving and doing this stuff and for a very prolonged period. Or there's this other thing that's happening and either I'm misaligned or something else is misaligned. And then you can make choices that lead to rest versus just being stuck. Like I can't do anything. And I think stuckness makes me feel the most unrest that I ever feel. I don't know about you both, but if I'm like stuck, I don't know why I feel this way. That is like the most unrestful state for me because then I don't feel like I have any steps out of it. It just seems like a perpetual unrest cycle. Like it just will never end. It'll never end.
And I think like what she was saying was, and I as she was talking, I was like, yeah, I feel like times in my life when I've felt stuck, it's because I I named it wrong the season I was in. Like, or I didn't have a way to name it. Like, I knew I felt unrest, but I didn't know why, and I think that's what was so great about what you said is like, first step, we got to recognize that God delights in rest. And then the second one is like, you got to name the unrest that you have in your life. And if you misdiagnose it, then you kind of you got to get it right before you can move on to the next step.
Just spend some more time with it. Yeah. It's not like you're going to get a bad grade. It's more like finding,
but just knowing
discovering.
That you have to name it before you can help it. You got to name it first, and then you can start to really get into like what you need to get the rest that you need.
Yeah. Another helpful thing that is related, if people need a little bit more just practical tip around this, is like we can also diagnose our seasons of unrest by paying attention to the fruit in our life. So if we're talking about fruit of the spirit, not just feelings. So like if you're in a state of fatigue, but your state of fatigue still allows for you to experience joy, empathy with others when that's needed, when you can still pray for others in your ministry and you really mean it. That usually means you're tired. You're tired, but you're not like spiritually off course, But there is unrest, which I am familiar with this type of unrest that produces irritability, cynicism, or withdrawal from certain things. That I think those are warning lights that we should pay attention to. Pay attention to those and just be aware. And like Brooklyn said, you can now make a choice of how you want to kind of move forward, knowing that perhaps your unrest is not a healthy kind. So it's interesting. We can say there's an unrest that is healthy and an unrest that is unhealthy as well, if we wanted to frame it that way too. But I just want to be vulnerable and say I've been in that unrest where I've just been so irritable, and I just don't like anybody anymore. And when that happens, then I immediately will have some self-reflection time and try to figure out what's going on with me internally. So
that's good.
That's another practical way to come around to this.
That's really good, Yulee. You're giving us words. I think sometimes when we don't have the vocabulary to name what's going on, it creates a little more frustration. So just having these words and being able to think through rest practically, just phrases like self-reflection, these are things that are helpful when, you said fruit of the spirit. And I'm like laughing because I'm imagining every single return from camp when the bus is unloaded and you're falling apart at the seam, you have red eyes, everything hurts. And they want you the next morning to get on stage and prepare a testimony or whatever. Thank God, right? For all the lives changed. But you're standing there and you are coming apart at the seams, but you're so glad that, that really good things happened. And these things are beautiful and transformative, but you're literally begging for your bed. You want to sleep. You don't want to talk to anyone. You cannot answer the phone one more time. So that is felt. It happens with kids ministry leaders, youth ministry, college, young adult, pastors, lead pastors, everyone.
Totally.
In organizations where compassionate work is being done, where justice work is being done, you can feel so fatigued. And unrest is real, but you can also find like a delight in that because it's the faithful work and not the kind where you're misaligned.
Yeah.
So that's a really beautiful point. So you're giving us words. We know we're remembering that rest is God's delight, recognizing our unrest. Now what?
Yeah. Okay. So I think when we also talk about rest in our culture today, it looks a lot like escape. And, honestly, like I know like how to do this really well. I'm sure all of us know how to escape really well. We have our own little ways of doing that. Perhaps one of my things is eating peanut M&Ms.
Yes, let's get into it.
Yes, let's go.
And just staring out
Just staring
into
out.
space. Yeah, just staring, literally just sitting there and staring for a few minutes. I would put that in the escape category of rest. It's not necessarily doing anything significant for me at the moment, but it is helpful to just have that little escape during the workday. But I want to encourage us to see rest as repair. So what does it look like to see rest as repair? And when we kind of reframe it that way, rest is not necessarily running away from responsibility. It's more like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a metaphor to make it relevant. I don't like charging our phones. Is that relevant? I don't even know.
As you were talking about it, I was thinking about the different parts of our life,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes nothing's going on in this part over here. And we feel all kinds of unrest about it because we're like, oh, I should be doing this. I should be like, more should be happening in that area. But maybe it's like a car in the shop, it's like getting the repair that it needs. And then it needs to, get worked on. And then someday it'll come back out and it'll be ready to go, but it needs to be in a place of repair for a little bit, like it needs the rest.
I like
don't know
that.
if that's a helpful metaphor.
I like that metaphor because a car has warning lights on it. And if you just push through and ignore them, you are so in trouble. Not that I know from experience, but it's like your oil is low. Okay, well, you should put some in there. Don't just keep going. And I think we're so used to, like you said, pushing harder and powering through, and we don't honor our limits. And then we break down and wonder why.
Or taking the car out of the shop before it's fixed, and then
or just
like,
taking it and parking it in the lot, but like not getting it fixed. There's so many ways we can avoid it. Avoid the repair because it might even feel painful sometime. Because like running away is easy. Like when you talk about staring out and eating an M&M, that sounds so like it just sounds like so appealing to me because that's something I can do to escape everything in ministry and life. I can escape my own kitchen sink this way. So it's like it feels easy to just retreat, but then no repair is happening. In fact, I'm just probably giving myself like a lot of sugar and insulin and stuff. I don't know how M&Ms work, but I definitely don't think it's helping me much. So
let's quote that, man. I don't know how M&Ms work.
Yeah, I've never heard that phrase before, but
well,
we'll dive into that on the next episode. How do M&Ms work? Let's do a whole episode on it.
Also, like the brand M&M peanut M&Ms, they work differently than like fake ones. So anyway, we'll dive into that later.
Oh, okay.
I love this idea.
Let's get
My
back
thumbs
to
are
it here.
weird though. They don't go up. Okay, so back to the matter at hand. We're talking about rest and how it's God's delight. Recognizing your unrest, which kind of what Yulee was saying is like you can't heal a season if you refuse to acknowledge it exists. So you've got to like recognize it and then kind of study it a little bit. And then she said, recognize rest as repair. It's not just a retreat. It's something that you work to repair, something that's been lost. Kind of like all of creation, God made it and then settled for a minute so it could remain whole or be beautiful or just be good. And I think when we just retreat, we don't find that place to repair and return to goodness and wholeness. So those are 3 ways that we can find rest. Tom, I hope you're listening because I'm feeling very exposed and so is Jason. Hopefully there's more of us that are feeling the this message. What else? Do you have 2 more ways, Yulee, that you want to share with us that will help us find rest?
Well, let me, before I go into the next 2 points, I just wanted to add on to the rest is repair part of it, just so that I close it off for people. I think retreating, like, when we go on retreats, I think that's okay too, but But my question is, what would it look like to see rest as repair? I think it's a different way of looking at rest. And I think that, when we work really hard, we put a lot of our energy into something, we are giving so much or things get taken from us, and we get worn down inside, and what repair, it's asking what repair do we need internally so that we can keep on doing what God has called us to do in ministry, right? And so escape rest is when we avoid life instead of being restored by rest. And so the escaping, I just wanted to make sure we continue to give people examples of escaping. That's like scrolling forever. And, I do that. So I'm not trying to shame anybody. So I do this too. It's like scroll on my phone forever, scrolling forever, distracting ourselves, but we don't actually feel better afterwards. Like, that feeling. You don't feel like a better person after doing that.
No, I feel
but
like trash.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I don't feel like trash, but I just feel like more tired.
Yeah.
What
I
did
watch
it
the
just
same
become?
movies, like the old
Yeah.
movies I've watched a million times. I just watch them
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah,
Which at
I
the
do
end of
that
them,
too.
I'm usually like, why did I watch that again? I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah,
Good.
same.
Yeah.
But actually, real rest should leave us feeling stronger.
Mm.
Like it should make
That's
us
good.
have a stronger comeback to life or to ministry. Like, are you coming back with more clarity? Are you coming back calmer? Like we talked about at the very beginning, are you coming back more loving? So if your rest helps you sort of re-enter life with more energy in these ways, then I think you've done some good repair work. I think that's how you can know, like, how are you re-entering life and ministry? And what is the fruit of that? So
That's so good.
yeah, those are just a little bit more,
Yeah, that's so
a
good.
little bit more, points that I wanted to give to everybody.
Can I tell you guys something?
Sure.
Okay, is it confession time?
I don't know what it is. I think churches should listen to this podcast and they should treat the word retreat differently after hearing this. Because so I was recently on a retreat at a place that I work. And it was the first time that it was actually a retreat. Like, it was a restful, nothing more was asked of me in that time that was like taking from me. And most of my time in ministry over the past 25 years, when I'm invited on a team retreat or a staff retreat, it is kind of a work retreat. It is like, we want you to have fun and look at this pretty mountain, but also let's plan our 5-year plan and rename the church and give it a new vision. And by the time you're done, you like need a retreat.
Yeah.
So we don't need to answer this question, but I just think we should reclaim the word retreat a little and maybe treat it as more of a holy word, less an organizational word, because if God retreated and called rest delight, then maybe we can reclaim that too. So I just want to tell you, that's what I'm thinking. I don't want to upset everyone, but maybe I've been using the word retreat wrong.
I think it's good because confession on my side of things, I don't think I've ever gone to something that's called a retreat and come out of it like what Yulee was saying, like feeling, man, I'm ready. Like I feel energized. I feel like filled back up. I'm ready to get in there. I often do feel a level of like, I need a retreat from that retreat that we just took.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good litmus test to be like, was that a retreat? Like, did I get repaired from that? Or did I just like do something that maybe was more just staring at out the window and eating M&Ms? Or this actually took like energy from me. It didn't actually give me energy. So I think that's a great way to like test it after the fact to see if a retreat is actually a retreat or if rest actually took place in the way that Yulee's talking about.
Yeah. And for kids and youth, many times I was planning those retreats. So I'm just like holding up a mirror at the same time and wondering, wow, I wonder what kind of rest kids need and teenagers need if we're not sure how to do it. it's probably something that we haven't been great at modeling. So the more rested we can become, the more rested the next generation can be, maybe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be beautiful? So I love that. Yulee, you're so right on when you say rest is repair, because it has the power to shape the future and give you something good as a result. So you have 2 more ways. I want to hear what they are. What's one more way that we can find rest?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how to do this a little bit more practically first. So I think when we think about rest, well, first of all, we think about rest a lot. Like we try to figure it out in our heads and it becomes this like cerebral thing that we do. But it needs to be something we practice with our body, right? So a lot of like, for example, a lot of leaders I know, when I talk to them and they come to me for coaching about rest, they try to rest by thinking differently instead of actually stopping. So this is a pattern that I've noticed. They try to rest by thinking differently instead of actually stopping. So I hear these phrases. I shouldn't feel tired. And they think just by saying that out loud or something, like they're just gonna
and therefore
find rest.
I won't.
I shouldn't and am not.
Another one is I just need a better attitude. And they'll just like say that to me and I'm like, so how I don't understand how that's gonna give you
They're
rest.
Just actively giving themselves an attitude adjustment like in public.
Yes. Okay, and this is the best one. If I think more biblically, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
If I think more biblically, I'll be fine.
So this is like the shame and the guilt part, right? The shame and the guilt that we
this
feel.
This is the part where we really
those
spiral.
are things like I should be this or I should be that. If I was more like this.
Yes. And that lives a lot in our head. And we're trying to like find rest somehow by changing how we think. But that's the mental gymnastics that I think that we should stop doing. That's exhausting. Trying to solve exhaustion with ideas. I just don't think that's gonna work. And so what we need to do is actually stop doing stuff. And like Jason said,
full stop. Just stop doing stuff.
Stop doing stuff and like do what Jason does is go to bed.
How do you know this, Yulee?
This is, a funny thing is Brooklyn and I sometimes talk about how leadership experts will say the simplest things and people are like, whoa, my mind is so blown. I feel like we are in that conversation right now.
Yeah.
We are, because you were like, you're blowing my mind with everything you say, but you're just really saying what we should do to live.
Yeah, it's just go like sleep. Stop checking your phone. Like eat real food, not just peanut M&Ms all day long. Take a day when you don't produce anything. Like, have you ever done that? What does that look like? And then let your nervous system calm down. Like, how do you let your nervous system calm down? Like, what practices do you have? There are all these breathing exercises. I do Pilates almost every day to help with this. I actually stopped scrolling my phone a couple hours before I go to bed, just to see if that was actually true. Like, does that actually help me to sleep better? For me, it does. And I have this little like Whoop band. I know Jason has this too, and we compete against each other.
That's why I was like, how do you know what time Jason goes to bed?
Yeah, so I keep track of Jason's bedtimes.
Oh man, this is weird. Danny, cut this whole part out.
Yeah, just get it out.
It just got weird. Okay.
We'll start over.
I was wondering where it would go, and then I was like, yeah, we went there. We did it.
Okay. No,
we did
Yulee,
it.
that list of things you just said was so succinct and perfect and micro. Just go to bed.
Yeah.
Quit scrolling. Maybe take a bath. Like do something.
Yeah. What do we fill that day with? Because the thing you said that I struggle with is the spending a day without producing anything. Because I'm an artistic person. So if I'm going to take a day of rest, I'm going to like write a poem or I'm going to like draw a picture. And I don't think that's necessarily bad, but it's a really slippery slope. Like it can very easily go into like, well, this drawing's got to be good, or this poem's got to be good. So taking a day where I don't produce anything, like what are small things you can fill that day with?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me put a caveat around that phrase, because I think that the actual question is what gives you delight? If we're going to connect it back to where we started this conversation. So what delights you? And figuring and answering that question for yourself, and then filling your day with the things that delight you. So for example, what delights me is also art and artistic things. So I like drawing. And to other people, that could look like I'm producing something for the day, right? But I actually don't normally do this delightful activity that I enjoy. So for me, my day would be filled with drawing or, going to a museum and looking at, paintings or sculptures and things like that. And so I think when we say take a day without producing anything, I'm trying to say producing the things that you normally would produce in your ministry, or your workplace. So for me, that would look like not filling out some Excel spreadsheets for the day, and then taking some time to draw, because I really like that. I find joy in that. And it's answering that for each one of us and finding out what delights us in that way.
That's really
I think
good.
That's really good. Yeah. I thought about like, for me, I can't believe I'm admitting this on there, but like sometimes I'll grab my guitar and I'll look up the chords for like old 90s songs and I'll like play them and sing them. And it's absolutely unproductive, but it's like that, as you were talking, I was like, that's something that like gives me a feeling of rest, like doesn't advance any projects I'm doing, definitely not, but it like
I'm just imagining Jason sitting in a corner singing Jars of Play, like with his guitar.
Something like that, and it doesn't have to be good. Like I don't think about how well I'm singing or how well I'm playing. It's just like
I did this. We were in New York for a retreat recently, and I had about 4 hours before we were going to meet with the team. And I decided I was going to go to a few bookshops. That's something I find restful. And I decided I wasn't going to make it a thing. Like I wasn't going to turn the delight around into another thing. Maybe not yet. Like I just wanted to ponder it in my heart and just hold it, and I don't have to talk about it, and I don't have to blog about it, or I don't have to do, and it's the same with ministry. It's like when you have a really successful thing or a really big VBS or something cool happens, or maybe something bad happened, but you figured it out. Sometimes the instinct is to immediately turn that into something else, like, and work harder at the thing you already worked extremely hard at in the first place. Sometimes there's that pull to like perform. And so I've been like really working to not make every moment of delight a performance or just something that I can turn in, because we're taught to like multiply the things we do and be good about, like I guess just turning things into multiple opportunities. But rest is meant to be for you, and it doesn't need to serve anyone but you. So I really appreciate this idea of resting in small ways and micro ways, maybe just resting a little bit each day, a little bit each week, a little bit each month, planning for it, scheduling it. That's why we like to plan our year sometimes in advance, so we can schedule some of these micro ways and some of the bigger ways too. But it doesn't always feel good to prioritize it. We talked about this earlier. So before we close up, I want to just ask you, what do you do when it's not easy to prioritize rest, when it feels difficult even?
Yeah, I think most times it feels difficult to prioritize rest, especially if you are in ministry, you feel called, you're super passionate about the work that you're doing. But I think we can quickly become disillusioned using that language for ourselves as well. We can use it as an excuse to never rest. So just knowing that we can do that, I think, is first helpful to know. I know a lot of people, I've had former bosses who also would tell me that they're so passionate about where God has called them to work that they don't really feel like they need to sleep a lot. They don't feel like, because God is going to take care of them, and yes, and I feel like we can tend to use this kind of language to excuse our very need for work. And then, we kind of throw away all that we talked about in this conversation about how God delights in our rest and how God commands that we take a Sabbath. And so I think it's being careful about that and how we talk to ourselves about our own callings and where God has called us to serve. And then when it's really difficult, I just personally accept that, like, hey, I'm in a really, really hard season. Like, a season of grief right now, or, I have a really big challenge going on, like, somebody in my family is ill, and it just feels really overwhelming. And I feel like I can never get in any rest. I think during those times, I have to remember that this is also temporary. Like, this is a season that I'm going through. And even in the midst of this difficult challenge, and this is where we go back to our identities in Jesus, right? This is remembering that even in the midst of our challenges and difficult seasons, that God is present with us. And how does God's presence fill us in ways that still bring us joy, that still help us to remember that we are loved, that we are strengthened in the midst of it. And I think remembering who we are in Jesus is a type of rest that we forget to do because we're just so overwhelmed. And so I just think that for the people listening to this, all the, ministry leaders out there, I think it's remembering who we are, and letting that give us the strength we need to go through this season. And then when we enter into another season where it feels a little bit lighter, then we can consider again these different ways of getting these micro rests, like taking a bath or sleeping earlier, reading books, or whatever rituals you might love. And it's considering those again, and just knowing that life is like that. It's like it's a constant going back and forth, right? It's not a perfect, like, 365 days of perfect Pilates and perfect sleep. It's just recognizing that, hey, life is really hard, but what are we going to do before it's too late? We don't want to wait for the time that we're exhausted, or the time when we need to go to the doctor because the stress in our life made us physically ill. We want to be consistent, and we want to know who we are in Christ. And then we want to just make sure that we stay committed to this idea of rest in general, and just remember how to go back and forth, I think. I don't know if that's even helpful, but
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing really we can do when it's really hard in our lives to like force ourselves to rest. I think it's just knowing that it's a hard season.
Yeah. Yulee, you were
Yeah.
helping us imagine rest in practice, like in the daily life. And part of that practice is knowing that life isn't always easy. You're a pastor, but also a prophet, because you don't know this, but before we got on this call, I was just telling Jason, hey, things are sideways. There's some weird family stuff happening. And you come to work, and you come to your family, and you come to your ministry as a human who holds heavy things sometimes. So rest might not even seem possible, but it's something we can value and delight in because we know it can repair us and it can reorient us to God's love and God's peace and God's ability and our inability. Like in the impossibility of whatever it is we hold, it's like we get to see that. And you just spoke directly to that. And so thank you for this invitation. Tom, thank you for the question because we wouldn't be here answering it without you, Tom.
Yeah.
But Yulee, you said so many things that I'm going to go back and listen to because they were arresting me, like, and putting me in jail.
Yeah, I think one thing
thank you.
One thing that stuck out to me as you were sharing that rest in small ways thing, I think we get so out of balance with our rest and our need for it that we tend to think that it's going to be some massive change in our life that we're going to need. We're going to need to do some massive overhaul of things. And instead you're saying like maybe just small things with consistency, which, you know, that's the way it is, but it's like hard to apply that to rest because we get so out of balance. And so I really appreciated that, like thinking small instead of thinking big when it comes to how we can actually tackle some of the unrest in our life.
Yeah. And like I used to be a kids and youth pastor, and you know what? Kids and youth pastors are so good at being consistent. We're consistent. We show up every week in the lives of our kids. We wear so many different hats. I used to be the worship leader, the projections person at the same time. I would train all the teachers. We do all of these things in ministry so consistently, and we do these things well. And I think it's just a matter of transferring that consistency that we already have in ministry to this realm of rest. And I think that kids and youth pastors are pros at being consistent. So I think I'm hopeful that we can all get there.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. And I appreciate the words you had to share with us. Just to recap what you've shared so far, you have told us to remember rest is God's delight, that we can recognize our unrest. We can recognize rest as repair. We can rest in small ways, and we can rest even when it feels like a risk. These are all things that make rest something we can do. We think about rest a lot for teenagers and kids. Like we actively make stuff that will help them rest. Devotionals and little discipleship activities and all sorts of things. But sometimes we don't always apply the same type of care to ourselves as leaders. So we just want to invite everyone listening to think about how you can cultivate rest in your life. We created this app. It's called the Spiritual Habit Tracker app. And Jason was saying a few minutes ago, sometimes it's the little things that add up. But unless you name the thing you want to do, sometimes it's hard to do that consistently. So in that app, there are normal things like spending time with God, spending time with others, using your gifts, sharing your story. But there's also ways to add your own habits that you would like. And you could add whatever rest is to you. You could add that as a habit that you keep. And as you learn how to rest, you can show kids and teenagers how to rest too. So I'm really, really grateful for this conversation. I am so grateful for you, Yulee. I'm floored. I'm just actually speechless. So thank you for sharing your time.
Thanks so much.
I was so happy to be here.
Sorry. I do hope that, how Yulee was saying, she gets away from Microsoft Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I hope someone's going to put in their spiritual habit tracker that they do Microsoft Excel spreadsheets for their rest. That is truly restful for them. They don't do that anywhere else. But when they need to just kick back and enjoy, they
good
do
old
some
math,
good old fashioned Excel sheets.
I want to meet that person.
Yeah,
I
who
do
is
too.
that?
I want to know that person. Please, if you're listening, tell us who you are. We want to hear your story.
You just want to create a fresh spreadsheet.
Just a fresh Excel spreadsheet. What would the rest of their life be like? We want to know.
I don't know. We've been sharing hobbies lately on the team, and I think a lot of them are we're saying they're hobbies, but they're really just rest activities. Someone on our team knits. Someone else has been making crocheted coasters. Jason's been sitting in the corner singing 90s songs to himself.
That's going to be my thing. Yulee's is going to be peanut M&Ms. I'm going to be strumming my guitar, singing Matchbox 20 songs.
No, I think I'm like, it's giving like, is she okay? The thing I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But I like to go, okay, so I work at a co-working space, and beside that space is a train station, which I've never noticed until I put my college-age daughter on it to go to college.
Okay.
I was like, wait, this whole time we've lived next to the Amtrak? Anyway, sometimes I come because I know the train comes every day at 1 something. And I sit on the bench and I watch the train come and go. What is going on over here? But I just sit and wait for it. And then it comes and people get on and some people get off. And then it goes away. And it feels like I'm waving someone off to war every time. I'm like, bye. Like, and they're gone. And I don't know who's there, but it's just kind of restful and peaceful. And also it makes me feel like I'm connected to my child somehow by like a railroad track. Anyway, we're really, really special over here. And
wait, do you actually wave at the people that you don't know?
I do, because they're waving. They're waving at their people, but I'm just there.
So you just join in the waving.
Yes, because it's so beautiful.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. And I'll bring my dog sometimes. Marley's pretty big and she'll just sit there. And I'm like, we're just here for y'all. Like, and I don't know who you are, but they're all waving. Some people are crying sometimes. And it's just restful to me to see humanity like care in these little tiny ways. And it reminds me like I'm human. And we can just, maybe unplug for a minute and remember that fact. In the middle of ministry, in the middle of life and all the things that are coming and going and bills and world things and stuff happening in the news. It's like sometimes we just need to pause and just have a little habit that helps us connect with that delight that God describes in the beginning.
Yeah.
So thank you, Yulee. Thanks, for
Yulee.
your ministry.
Yay.
Pastor Yulee, Dr. Pastor Yulee, Prophet Lee. We are so grateful for you. And if you would like to ask more questions about rest or other things, we'd love to hear them. You can always submit your questions at KMA.show. Thanks for being with us today, Yulee.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Okay, what an eye-opening, wonderful conversation you guys had. I mean, I love Yulee and the words she always says. Everything she says is just so insightful and so spot on. But especially when it came to this topic, I was so encouraged to hear the things that she said.
Yeah, so much stuff that she talked about is just like imprinted in my brain now. Like I've just been running it through my mind and how I can incorporate the stuff she said into my life, especially the aspect of labeling unrest in our lives, like how we can do that and how if we don't do that or if we label something wrong, label unrest in an incorrect way, then it makes it hard for us to get the rest that we actually need. That rung's so true in my life. And so I've been definitely trying to like look at my unrest and analyze it more instead of just being like, well, I'm tired, or I feel, So that really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's so great because we tend to trivialize those moments of unrest, right? We just think like we dismiss it as something else. But able to call it out and be able to bring rest into those situations is so crucial. So love that. I'm so glad you got to be in that conversation. I'm also slightly jealous that I didn't get to be there, but now we have all of this for everyone to hear and take away from. So thank you, Yulee, for that and for you and Brooklyn for being a part of that conversation. And for those of you who are looking for ways to really bring rest into your calendar, into your rhythm, we have a nice tool that you can use for that. It's an app called Habits by Grow, and you can get that in the link in our show notes.
Yep. I think that's like a direct answer to the question that Tom asked. You start with this spiritual habit tracker, and that's the way you can kind of build it into your ministry. A good place to start.
Yes, absolutely. Well, before we go away for today, we got to ask the question that everyone's been thinking about this whole time. And the question is, Jason, what are you into these days?
Okay, so aside from getting more rest, the other thing that I'm into is dog pampering.
Say more.
Yes. So I have a dog named Champ. He's a 3-year-old white lab, and he is my best buddy. And we have been taking him since it's cold outside. I usually give him like his baths outside when it's in the summer, but since it's been cold, I took him to this place where he like basically goes through a dog spa. He gets all kinds of nice shampoos and conditioners. They have like balm for their paws that you can put on. He gets blow dried. He gets all kinds of pampering. This was really fun for my son and I to kind of to take Champ through. And so that's what I'm into, how to pamper my BFF during the winter months here.
Oh, Champ's a good dog, and also famous for those of you who don't know. Yeah. There's some cool clips of Jason and Champ out there. Yeah.
What about you? What are you into?
With the holidays and things, it's been really hard to be into any one thing because we've just been pulled into so many different activities. But one thing that I did try recently, as in yesterday, was I did try that viral Japanese cheesecake trend. Have you seen this?
I have not seen this.
So you take Biscoff cookies and you soak it into Greek yogurt or vanilla yogurt, whatever your preference is, and you soak it for many, many hours. And then later, like the cookie gets soft and you can scoop it out and it really tastes like cheesecake.
What?
And yes, and I am happy to report that I tested it out on 4 different types of yogurt because I'm weird that way. And I also tried it with Oreo. I also added some matcha powder to some of them as a fun little experiment. Delicious.
Right.
Delicious.
Wow.
Yes.
So this is not a myth. This is a real thing.
I had to try it out. And guys, this viral trend, it actually works.
Cool. I'll need to try that too. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so easy, right? No cooking involved. You just dunk some cookies in there and let it sit for a while.
Incredible.
Yeah, so.
Incredible.
Anyway, thank you everybody for being a part of this episode, for hanging in here till the end. We are so grateful for all of you. Thank you, Jason, for being here. Thank you, Yulee and Brooklyn, also for being a part of that conversation. Thank you, Tom, for your question. Yeah. And everyone, if you have a question you'd like answered on this podcast, feel free to submit your questions to KMA.show, and we will feature it and find you the answers you need, because that's what we're all about. Well, until next time, everybody, take care, get some rest. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.